Okay, in this video we discuss seasonality, and I'm going to talk about seasonality and the decomposition method together. Seasonal indices. So we were going to calculate a seasonal index, and a seasonal index is just a number that tells you how much more or less that particular time period is against an average. So it's a number that if it's 1.0, that means there's no seasonality. If the number is bigger than that, like 1.2, then that would mean that that particular time period is 20% more than the average. And if the seasonal index was 0.9, then that would mean that it was 10% less than the average without seasonal effects. So we're going to calculate seasonal indices, and then we're going to use the decomposition method to forecast the future. So here's our data, and remember this is the one where we did a scatter plot, and we can clearly see that we have a seasonal effect of quarter 3 is the highest quarter. We also have other effects, but what we want to do, the decomposition method, the concept is that we strip out seasonality. So what can we do to strip out any seasonal effects, and then use forecasting methods, other forecasting methods that we've already discussed, forecast the future, and then add the seasonality back in. That's what decomposition method is. So the very first thing I've got to do is I've got to calculate an overall average. And all I'm going to do is take the average of my historical information. So that would, so 548 would be somewhere here. I'll just plot it. There. So that's the overall average. That's just the average without seasonal effects. That's the first part. The next thing is that we calculate something called a seasonal ratio. And what we do is we take what really happened and divide by the quarterly average. The next thing we're going to do is calculate our seasonal index. Now the seasonal index is the average of all the seasonal ratios for our quarter. Since this is by quarters and we're looking at quarterly effects, what I'm going to do is take the average of all of my quarter ones. And that becomes my, well, let's show that as a ratio. And that becomes the seasonal index for quarter 1. And I've got 4 of these. So you can see, and again, what this is the average of all my quarter 3s, average of all my quarter 2s, average of my quarter 4s. And what you can see is that quarter 3, on average, is 16% higher than the overall average. With everything else being equal, if I had to predict quarter 3, I would say, well, what's the average quarter? And then multiply it times 16%. Or excuse me, increase it by 16%. Well, I'm going to repeat these. So let me make sure all these are to 2 decimal places, just so we can see. So these are just repeating. So this is this one, this is this one, this was this one. And all I did to make it repeat is I pointed to 4 rows above it. So when I copy that down, anywhere I copied, it's always pointing 4 rows above it. So that's how you can repeat those. So that's the first step. That is calculating seasonal indices. We've done that. Now that we've done that, now we can move on to the decomposition method. And the very first thing you do in decomposition is that you deseasonalize your actuals. And how you deseasonalize is that you divide by seasonal index. So I take my what really happened and I divide by my seasonal index. And you can see what happens is that when the number is less than 1 and you divide by a number less than 1, you get a number bigger because it's taken a valley and bringing it up. And when we divide by one that has a spike, like this one, it takes the actual and it makes it smaller because it's getting rid of the peak. So that's what deseasonalized. Now, when I look at this, if I would plot what really happened and the deseasonalized, if you would see this, hold on. The red, you can see, has been deseasonalized. We don't have the spikes as much. It doesn't mean that we don't have variability. It's just that the higher or low numbers attached to specific quarters has been taken care of. Now, what's cool about this is that if we had another repeating pattern, we could deseasonalize again. I mean, you could do this a series of times. If you had a different seasonal effect that was maybe every other year you had something, you could also do it again and get rid of those. Okay, so that's the first step, is deseasonalize. Now that we've got deseasonalized data, now we can use another forecasting method. We could use trend, exponential smoothing, double smoothing, whatever we want to. All I'm going to do is a very simple trend. So I'm going to calculate I'm going to use a trend forecast. So I'm going to calculate the slope and the intercept of the deseasonalized data. Here's my y's. This is my deseasonalized. And here's my x's. Same thing on this one. As I calculate the intercept. Here's my y's. My x's. Now that I've done that, now I'm going to take that and forecast the future. So I'm going to go down here. And I'm going to, let's go out another year. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is going to be my slope multiplied by I think I'm off a column. Yep. My slope multiplied by my time period into the future plus my intercept. Put some dollar signs around that. And that gives me a projection into the we'll just do that real quick. This is so what I'm doing is forecasting what really happened, and then also my forecasting of the future with that. And if you noticed, this is you can see what this is the trend into the future. But I now have to seasonalize this back. That's the last step, is I got to take this, drop this a little bit, drop this hardly, I actually raise it up. This goes up 16% and this drops a little bit. So I'll go ahead and do it on one additional column. And this is seasonalized. And all I do is take, well, let me drop my indices. These are my indices. So I'm going to take my forecast into the future that's not seasonalized. I'm going to seasonalize it by multiplying. You seasonalize by multiply, you deseasonalize by dividing. And that's it. That's my forecast. Those are the numbers if I wanted to forecast the future. Again, just as a final, I'm plotting, there's the actuals, and then column L is my future. There you go. And that would be my forecast for the next year. Thanks.